Have you ever wondered what is domestic violence? Whether you've seen it on the news or a friend or someone you know has told you that they've experienced domestic violence. What is it? Well, in today's video, we're going to talk about what is domestic violence, the statistics, the tactics that are used, and how to look out for it. Coming up. Hi everybody, and welcome back to Awaken Justice's channel. My name is Tara. I'm the executive director here at Awaken Justice, and we talk about all things healthy relationships, domestic violence, human trafficking, and who you are in Jesus Christ. Today, we're going to be talking about domestic violence. What is it? The definition of domestic violence by the NCADV says that it's willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, other abusive behavior as part of a systematic pattern of power and control perpetrated by one intimate partner against another. And it's a common myth about domestic violence that it's only physical or sexual. In fact, there are other types of abuses that can occur other than physical and sexual. But when we turn on the news or we see a victim of physical abuse, you can see the scars and the bruises, so it's easier to believe them. But with the other types of abuse, it's a lot harder to detect because it's through manipulation or psychological abuse or emotional, and the scars are left on the inside with the person's soul and who they are. There's a myth also that there's this thing called mutual abuse. Mutual abuse does not exist. That's when some people are shifting blame from the abuser to the victim. For example, when I was exiting my abusive marriage in 2017, I had a friend who told me that I had just as much to do with the destruction of my marriage as he did. However, I was fleeing that situation because of the abuse, and because I could see a cycle and a pattern that wasn't breaking. So I was determined to break that cycle. Now, this is a common thing that people say. Well, you had just as much to do with it. No. When an abuser chooses to abuse, that is their choice. A victim never causes their own abuse. There are 5 different types of domestic violence. There's physical, sexual, psychological, emotional, and financial. There's also stalking and cyber abuse. It may not happen every day, and it can be a mixture of all of the different types of abuses. Some are more apparent on one day and others on another. It can be a unique blend of the different abuses to experience it. And most likely, if you're experiencing physical or sexual abuse, you're experiencing the other types as well. Domestic violence is a cycle. First, it starts with the honeymoon stage, the love bombing. This is where they convince you that you can do no wrong, that you are the one and only for them, and that you are this wonderful human being and they want to spend the rest of their lives with you. This is how they hook you in, is through that honeymoon stage. They pretend to be this amazing, perfect guy and project it on you that you're lucky to be with them. And then after that, there's some calm, but then tension begins to build. There's conflict, and you start to see the real them starting to come out. And then the abuse happens. They push back your boundaries and they abuse you. When you stand up for yourself, they're quick to apologize and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then they do grandiose gestures in order to convince you that that was only a one-time thing. They take you back to that honeymoon stage to start the cycle all over again. And that is how they hook you. And that is why a lot of victims, including myself, stay in far longer than they would really like to, because they're convinced that the person that they love, really, behind it all, would never treat them like that. So when it does happen, they brush it off as just a one-time thing, or they transfer the blame to themselves. I know in my abusive situation, I would blame myself all the time. I'd say, well, if I was a better wife, or if I didn't say something, then maybe he wouldn't have hit me. Maybe I am bad with money, and so that's why he's not letting me have access to my finances. The blame as a victim sometimes gets put on themselves. we say, no, it was my fault. It must be my fault because that person is so wonderful. And that is why the honeymoon stage is so dangerous, because they convince you that they're better than you deserve. And that's not okay. At the core of domestic violence is power and control. This is why people abuse. They want to have power and control over another human being. Their goal is to tear down the individuality of the person that they're with. Their values, their beliefs, their likes, their boundaries, their thoughts, and their purpose in life. They want to just tear it all down because it makes them feel powerful and in control of the other person. They want someone to be a part of them and a part of who they are, not an individual being. So they want their significant other to like everything that they like, to go along with everything they want to do. But that's unhealthy because each and every one of us are an individual being with our own likes and dislikes. Each case of domestic violence is unique. However, the cycle is the same and the tactics are the same. I remember when I was sharing my story with my friend a few years ago, and I was sharing it and I was explaining what I had gone through. She said, Tara, the stripes are the same, but the colors, they're different. See, her situation was slightly different. She experienced things in a different way. But the tactics that were used, the manipulation, the types of abuse were all the same. So that's why domestic violence is so hard to see. Because in each situation, it is a specifically unique combination of abuse for just that couple. So let's talk about some of those statistics. If you can believe it, half of women and half of men have experienced psychological aggression by an intimate partner. 50% of the world population. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have been raped, experienced physical abuse, or stalking in an intimate partner relationship. So my guess is that you know some people around you who have experienced domestic violence. And in fact, 90%, so majority of abusers, do not have a criminal record. They don't. So it's important to know that when you're looking at these great people in society, that you can't see what's behind closed doors. You can't tell. Because majority of the time, people don't report, or when they do, they barely get convicted. Some tactics that are used are love bombing, like we were talking about earlier, grooming, and testing of boundaries, which is slowly and coercively pushing your boundaries till you don't know where the boundary was to begin with. Abuse, either psychological or physical. They apologize and then they minimize what they did to their victim. I'm so sorry, but it wasn't that bad. Then they blame their victim. So they say, well, it was your fault. If you didn't do this, then I wouldn't have abused you. And they put it on their victim. And then they use honeymooning or that love bombing again after the abuse to manipulate the person that they're with to believe that they've changed or that they're not going to do it again. And it keeps them in this very vicious cycle, which is why it is so common for people to stay in abusive relationships for a very long time because they want to believe the best in that person. But their abuser is doing just that. They're abusing them, and they don't see anything wrong with it. The one thing about domestic violence is that it's so common that it can occur to absolutely anybody. It can occur to you, to your friends, to your family, and in fact, there's probably somebody or people in your social circle that have experienced domestic violence. Domestic violence needs to be talked about. We all know someone, or we ourselves have experienced it. So let's break this stigma of talking about domestic violence. If you like this video, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell for alerts of when we post a new video. We post a new video every Friday, so come on back next week. And every 4th Friday, we have survivor stories. That's when we do a YouTube live talking with survivors and people within the domestic violence or human trafficking field to get their point of view of what's going on in the world. So thank you so much for tuning in and for finding out what is domestic violence. I hope to see you next time. Have a good one.